Cairn is one of those games that sounds simple until you try to explain why it completely ruined other games for you. On paper, it fits neatly next to modern navigation games like Death Stranding or Baby Steps, games where walking is the mechanic and progress is earned one miserable step at a time. But once Cairn clicks, it becomes clear it's doing something far more specific, far more physical, and honestly far more impressive than most games brave enough to slow you down. This is not a game about movement. This is a game about bodies, and more specifically, about how much your body hates you. You play as Aava, a renowned mountain climber with a terrifying reputation and the social skills of someone who actively avoids people on purpose. We meet her at the base of Mount Kami, an impossibly tall peak once inhabited by a society of troglodytes, who apparently looked at horizontal living and said, "No thanks, we're going vertical." Ava's goal is simple: be the first to reach the summit. What follows is about 15 hours of climbing, assuming things go well. If they don't, and they often don't, it can be much longer or extremely short in the most fatal way possible. At first, Cairn feels awkward, even unrefined, and that's because it's asking you to do something games almost never ask: actually think about how a body moves. There's no auto climbing, no sticky handholds, no cinematic leaps of faith. Moving a limb is mechanically simple. You press a button, move the analog stick to place the limb, then press the button again to lock it in. The twist is that the game decides which limb you're moving based on which one is bearing the most weight. So sometimes you think you're moving a hand, but the game says no, actually you're moving your leg, and if you mess this up, gravity gets involved. At first, this feels like nonsense. You panic, you fumble, you fall, repeatedly. But then something strange happens. Your brain rewires itself. You stop thinking about hands and feet and start thinking about balance, about pressure, about whether this is a good idea or a terrible one. There is an option to manually control limbs hidden in the menu. I tried it. Briefly, it is nightmare mode. Do not do this unless you enjoy suffering and have something to prove. As you climb, you'll find small shells, cracks, and pockmarks in the rock. They're never exactly where you want them to be, which is where Cairn's stamina system really shines. There's no stamina bar. Instead, Ava's body tells you everything. Her limbs shake, her breathing grows heavy, the screen blurs, your controller vibrates like it's trying to warn you personally. Sometimes you have to risk a scramble. When that happens, speed matters. You can briefly stabilize by resting a limb, but if you take too long to redistribute her weight, she will fall. Not always to her death, though. Aava carries pitons which she can hammer into the rock to create temporary safe zones. These aren't safe points. They're more like "please don't make me do that again" points. You can hang safely, recover stamina, and access your backpack. Pitons are limited. I usually had 3 or 4, which means every placement feels like a negotiation with the mountain. Use one too early and you'll regret it later. Save them too long and the mountain will simply take everything from you. When you reach solid ground, Aava can send her ancient robot companion to retrieve them. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they break, sometimes Mount Kami decides it deserves them more than you do. Once this rhythm clicks, climbing becomes slow, deliberate, and strangely meditative, until it suddenly isn't. The higher you go, the more you realize Mount Kami is full of viable routes. This is not a straight line upward, it's a vertical maze, but while harder, faster routes exist, they're rarely the smart choice early on, because Aava also needs to eat, drink, and sleep. At first, the survival systems feel brutal, almost unfair. You can turn them off if you want, but I really don't think you should. Aava starts the climb with basically nothing. She can only properly rest and save at specific camps. There are long stretches of vertical climbing with no water, no food, and no mercy. The game bakers have tuned this beautifully. You are supposed to feel doomed. You are supposed to think you've messed up your run. And then, right at the last possible moment, relief arrives. A cave full of goats, a pond full of fish, a campsite just barely within reach. The relief is enormous. It feels earned. It feels physical. It also means there's a very real possibility of failure. You can reach points where you're too exhausted and too far from resources to continue forward. The idea that you might need to backtrack multiple save points adds a constant low-level anxiety to every decision. These systems will absolutely push some players away, but they are essential to what Cairn is actually about. Because this is not a game about conquering a mountain, it's a game about discovering how fragile a body really is. Cairn doesn't mythologize Aava. It doesn't frame her as heroic. If anything, it treats her with a quiet, respectful pity. She's brilliant, she's skilled, and she is absolutely breakable. When Aava falls, she yells at herself in the mountain. Sometimes she screams, not in a quippy video game way, but in a raw, guttural way that feels uncomfortable to hear. Her hands tear and bleed, and you have to bandage them manually, finger by finger. When she rests at camp, she doesn't just sleep. She does push ups, sit ups, she reads, she punishes herself. At one point, you meet another climber. He's enthusiastic. A little annoying. I wanted to be polite. Aava very clearly did not. She's so consumed by her mission that even human connection feels like a distraction. Aava is not an avatar, she is a person, fearful, obsessive, and slowly confronting her own mortality. There is lore here. There's a mythology tied to Mount Kami, but the real story is told through hunger, exhaustion, and the constant threat of falling. And somehow, through all of this, Cairn becomes beautiful. Every climb feels cinematic because it's earned. You don't climb just to climb, you climb to see what's next, and there's always something. Strange encounters, surreal moments, long stretches of quiet that suddenly turn into pure panic. Where Baby Steps was absurdist, Cairn is quietly dreamlike until it becomes a nightmare without warning. Its storytelling is restrained, trusting its systems more than its words, and through that restraint, it creates one of the most human protagonists I've played in years. Cairn isn't flawless. Flat surfaces can behave oddly. Wayfinding isn't always clear. I once accidentally skipped the final stretch of a major climb due to a bug, which is not ideal. But none of that diminished the experience. I haven't even talked about cooking, or how weather can completely destroy your plans, or how miserable climbing at night is, or how often I stop just to use photo mode because the game looks incredible. Comparisons to Death Stranding, Baby Steps, Peaks of Yore, even Co-op make sense. But Cairn feels like something new, something more earnest, more grounded. It feels like the clearest proof yet that this emerging genre, this idea of games as body drama, has real legs, or in this case, arms. Cairn isn't perfect, but it understands exactly what it wants to be and commits to it completely. Cairn is a 9 out of 10, and it's one of the most quietly unforgettable games I've played in years. If you enjoyed this review, leave a like and subscribe for more gaming reviews. See you next time.